I'm particularly interested in reaching and really targeting younger folks entering the industry in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's exciting about it is that they're already coming in with a slightly different perspective, where they seem to be more focused on their role as citizens.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see the evolution. I've been teaching for 12 years or so. And I think the global financial crisis had a big impact on that, and on the motivation of a lot of students who are entering finance. So there's a very receptive audience amongst that younger generation, which is part of the reason why I wanted to write the book. But this is a good topic to discuss now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it is. And well, I guess the product of business schools today is what banks and others need to employ in the future, and to attract those people as employees is going to put pressure on them to bring about change. I guess that's one way in which change is going to happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, one thing that's fascinating is the extent to which a lot of the older traditional finance firms have moved into new areas that are more thoughtful about their impact on the world, whether it's all sorts of ESG investments or impact investing. And it's often driven by younger folks. There's a huge amount of demand from younger consumers. So if they're, the wealth management units of investment banks say how much it's the younger customers that are really demanding these products, but it's also the younger employees that are showing a huge amount of interest in this. It wasn't top down; it was very bottoms up in terms of.
Well, we've seen employee pressure bringing about changes in companies like Google and their policies, for example, and not in respect of investments and finance necessarily, but other matters that are of concern to them. So I guess well-informed younger generations who understand the potential power of investing in the right things, whether that's in investments made by the business or by investors in the business, bodes well for the future potentially.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's a key point. I mean, like you mentioned, well-informed.
Yeah,
that's the thing that's so different from certainly my generation's. Their access to information is unbelievable. In fact, they're better than I am at accessing information. So they're not approaching this in any kind of naive way. They understand also the constraints, and that's that's an interesting mix of being somewhat idealistic and but being
empowered,
I think realistic about what they're going to face.
Yeah, I guess also that is it true that they tend to want to work for those involved in impact investment and probably are increasingly likely to shun those that they see as being the laggards?
Well, I mean, I see two different trends. One of them is there's a huge amount of demand from students for being involved in areas like impact investment.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that impact investment is a tiny area of investments.
Yeah.
And so the demand for it way exceeds the supply of it. But that is changing because now you have the world of ESG has exploded in the last couple of years, and almost any traditional investment firm has to focus on ESG and has to embed that in their processes. And
so what percentage of them are looking to become, for example, ESG analysts and looking at careers in finance that are not necessarily the traditional routes?
That it's interesting because there was a lot more of a dichotomy, say 5 years ago, where either they wanted to do traditional finance or they wanted to do something like impact investment, which was a very tiny field and an emerging field. But now you don't see as much that dichotomy because large traditional investment managers have to embrace ESG. So it's almost taken as as an article of faith that you're going to have to be more focused on your impact on the world going into investment management and going into finance. So it's interesting because you see a little bit less of, you know, the ones who just want to focus on their impact on the world, and those who are just interested in finance. And there's much more melding of the two worlds now, convergence.